Hello and welcome back. Uh, I'm Professor Bachel, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about characters in fiction. Characters are the people of fiction. Okay, they can be people. Oftentimes, sometimes characters can be an animal or something like that. We've seen plenty of sci-fi where characters are robots. Um, but we're interested mostly in human characters. Um, uh, there can be in sci-fi alien characters, those sorts of things. But once again, we're interested in human characters. Now, remember, we've already talked about narrators and we've talked about theme. And the big difference with narrators is you have first person narrators, which is a character in a story telling the story. And then you have third person narrators. And these are narrators that are voices that are created by the author to tell the story, just a disembodied voice. Remember, don't make the mistake that the narrator is the author. The author is not our concern, okay? It's either going to be that third person disembodied voice or it's going to be a character in the story telling the story, all right? We also talked about theme. Remember, theme is a concept or idea that the story is about, and you want to try to get that theme into a word. It's an idea or a concept. Remember, so keep it short, succinct, and precise. But we're going to talk about characters now. Now, for our purposes, we're going to identify three character types. So you might want to get your pencil and paper out or your pen and paper and take some notes. You can pause this video if you have to. Um, and I want you to be able to differentiate between these three character types. Okay. Uh, also use the literary lexicon to understand characters. There's a very detailed explanation, which is what I'm going off in this micro lecture. And if you need to check these terms, go to the literary lexicon, look at the character types, and that will help you out more. So I'm going to talk about three different types of characters. And um, the big difference between character types is some character types don't change. They're what we call static, okay? And then there is a type of character that can change, and that does change, and those are dynamic. But you don't really have to worry about static or dynamic. The three character types I'm going to talk about, are you ready? Are flat characters, stock characters, and round characters. Okay, let's start with flat characters. Flat characters are sort of like background characters. They don't have a lot of defining characteristics, maybe one or two. They serve a purpose to keep the plot going. They're necessary. They're important in fiction, just as they are in real life. I'm thinking of the stories that we've seen so far. We've read The Telltale Heart, and we've read Young Goodman Brown. So if we're thinking of The Telltale Heart, I would say in that story, even the old man with the eye is a flat character. I mean, the only things that we know about him is that he's got the blind eye, which our narrator characterizes as the vulture eye, and he's an old man and he's a roommate. So definitely a flat character. Okay. And that's all we really need to know about him. He just kind of serves to run the conflict. We just don't get that much about him, really. I would also argue that the police that show up in the Telltale Heart are flat characters. They're really their only discerning characteristic is the fact that they are police and they're investigating a crime. They have no development. They don't change. They're just sort of that's their job, the police. And that's all they really have to do with the story. Okay, so flat characters. Now let's think about Young Goodman Brown. There's lots of flat characters in Young Goodman Brown. Um, just sort of background characters. Maybe some of the Indians they see at the ceremony in the forest, or uh, just kind of background characters around the village that don't get a lot of um, development and that we don't really see that much. Okay. Next type is going to be stock characters. Okay. And stock characters are characters that we sort of recognize. They're recognizable types. In fact, when you think of stock characters, you want to be thinking types. A stock character is a certain type of character. Okay, Young Goodman Brown is full of stock characters because that story is an allegory. So you have um, characters like that sinister figure who we all think is the devil, right? The devil is sort of like the ultimate stock character, takes many forms and many guises, appears in all kinds of literature and film and popular culture, right? So the devil is a stock character. We know the devil's not going to change. The devil's not going to develop. The devil has certain characteristics that we all recognize. In fact, in the story, uh, even his sinister looks, he's carrying that staff that's like a snake, right? That's a stock character. I would say that Faith in Young Goodman Brown is a stock character. She's sort of like the loving, faithful wife, even though we do see her at that ceremony. Uh, we're not sure if that's real or not, and it really doesn't affect her character much. We don't even know how she decides when Goodman Brown says, no, no, resist, right? So Faith is a stock character. She's just sort of like the loving, faithful wife. Uh, you could say that lots of the characters in Goodman Brown, since it is an allegory, are going to be stock, right? They may seem strange because this story is strange, but think about things like the corrupt minister, the minister that everybody thinks is a good guy, but really he's corrupt. Whether it's true or not, that character's stock. He's not going to change. Uh, so, characters that we recognize. I would argue that in The Telltale Heart, our narrator is a stock character. He's your typical sociopathic murderer, probably schizophrenic, right? He doesn't have any kind of revelation. He's we get the feeling he's in prison, right, or in a mental hospital when he's telling us the story, and he's not going to change. He's not going to say, "Wow, why did I do that? I should have never killed that old man. What was I thinking?" Right? That's not him. He is an archetypal stock character. He's the deranged murderer, the sociopath. We see characters like that in horror films. We see them in stories, and he's not going to change. So he's stock as well. Okay, so those are some examples. Remember, flat characters, very few defining characteristics. They don't change. They're sort of background characters, good for the plot and support, and that's about what they do. Now, stock characters, remember, they're recognizable types. So if somebody says, this guy was your typical um, office worker, that's a stock character, right? If they don't change. Um, if you can go out in society and find a character like this, and it, it, you can go into, like, say, any store and you see the same type of person working at the register, that's a stock character, right? I say in reality, but those types of characters show up in fiction and literature as well. So stock characters can be things like the mad scientist, the dumb jock, um, the salty sea captain, the sidekick, things like that. Now, keep in mind that at their worst, stock characters are stereotypes. At their sort of foundation, they can also be seen as archetypes, or they're a form of an archetype, right? And they don't change. So flat characters and stock characters don't change. Okay, they can have different things happen to them, but they're not going to change. Round characters are a little different. They're more dynamic. They're more developed. So this is round characters, and round characters usually have some sort of a change happen to them from their experiences in a story. And once again, if we go back to, say, the Telltale Heart, we don't get any round characters in there, right? We get a psychopath murderer. We get who's a stock character. We get a old man, flat character. Police, flat characters in that story. Okay, so so no round characters in there. Now in Young Goodman Brown, we could argue that Goodman Brown is a round character. because he does undergo a very dramatic change. In fact, uh, in the last discussion, much of the discussion was about whether his change was reasonable or not. And um, he goes from being sort of this faithful, everyday, regular guy, goes to church, loves his wife, and then after his experience in the forest, completely different. Paranoid, um, he's suspicious, he does not believe the reality that he sees, he's judgmental of all the people around him. I would argue that Goodman Brown is a round character. And also, this shows us that just because a character changes or makes some changes to their behavior does not mean that the changes are going to be positive. I don't think Goodman Brown's change was positive. Right? He has a dramatic, life-changing experience, but it's not good. His outcome is not good. Remember, his dying hour was a gloom. Bummer, huh? So, what I want you to get out of this, and we will be using this in some of our writing, is that there are three character types. And once again, I said you can reference these in the literary lexicon, and which is under pages, and they are flat characters, one defining characteristic, stock characters, recognizable, unchanging types, and then the round characters, developed characters that surprise us, that make changes, and that undergo change from their experience. Okay, so those are the three types of characters that I want you to know from now on as we go through fiction. So remember, so far we've got theme, that concept or idea that a story is about. We've got narrators. You can have first person, which is a character in a story, or who is telling the story. And you can also have third person narrators, which are just these voices created by the author. And do not say, this is the author talking. It's never the author. It's either going to be that first person narrator or the third person narrator that the author creates. Okay, well, we'll have more of these literary micro lectures and updates coming along. So have a good week, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.